All right, we're going to begin this hour with the very latest on the war with Iran. Overnight, the U.S. and Israel launched new airstrikes, and Iran continued to hit back. 6 members of the U.S. military have been killed. U.S. nationals have been warned to evacuate from these 14 countries in the region. And the Department of Homeland Security has now posted a warning for Americans here after Iran's religious leaders called on Muslims to avenge the death of the country's supreme leader. Meantime, here in the United States, many Iranian-Americans are celebrating the Ayatollah's death.
We are done with Islamic Republic. We don't want the ideology. We want peace.
The people of Iran were chanting in the streets, asking for this help, for this humanitarian intervention.
We've been waiting for this moment for 47 years. And finally, there is a president in the office who actually listens.
We're joined now by Negar Mortazavi. She is the senior fellow at the Center for International Policy, a host of the Iran podcast, and she has covered Iran and the U.S. Middle Eastern policy for over a decade. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Before we get into the nuts and bolts of what's happening with this war, Negar, I just want to ask you, because you have family in Iran, how are they doing? How are they faring?
Well, so far, it seems like everyone that I know is safe, but it's very difficult to get in touch. Communications is limited, and, nobody knows where the next target is going to be. We see civilian infrastructure, civilians' homes. A school was targeted on the first day of the attack on Saturday. An elementary girls' school in a southern city of Minab was attacked. 160 children, schoolgirls aged 7 to 10 were killed. So, from the very first moment of the war, we see a civilian toll, and it's just anybody in the diaspora who has family inside the country is anxious and worried about their family.
We're glad your family's okay, but let us paint a picture for people who may not at all be familiar with Iran. The U.S. has said a lot more bombardment is coming. What have you heard about the conditions for civilians? Because it's my understanding that many police stations, many military installations are very close to civilian homes and residences.
Absolutely. I mean, these are urban areas, cities, towns. We're talking about normal police stations, like any of your audiences can imagine any police station that they would see in their cities, in their towns, potentially close to their homes or a school, their workplaces. And this is certainly not just a targeted attack like we saw last June. Last June, Operation Midnight Hammer only targeted Iran's 3 major nuclear sites. No civilian toll. Actually, there was no casualty in that attack. This time around, it's just been very different. And we've seen hospitals have been attacked. We've seen, as I mentioned, that school, and just the civilian toll on the Iranian side is very high. Over 500 so far killed, and most of them civilians.
Negar, what are you hearing from Iranians on the ground about what they think about this war?
Nobody can speak for all Iranians.
I realize that, yeah.
Exactly. So I just want to give you there's a variety. Of course, there is a part of the population that's the base of the regime. You see them coming to the street mourning the killing of the supreme leader. And there's also an opposite side. I would say the majority is not happy with the status quo. Obviously, they want fundamental change in the country. But there's also a divide among that part of the population as far as how that change should come. There's change that you can bring from the inside with movements, Iranians really deciding their own future. And then there's change from the outside with military attack. And we've seen the track record of the U.S. trying to bring that change in the region, in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya. It just hasn't turned out in the way that it was promised. Democracy, nation building, better governance is just not that kind of future that military intervention from the outside has brought. And I think a big portion of the population is really worried when they see this kind of military intervention.
It is interesting. It is interesting to hear the 2 different reactions. That's why I was wondering if you could just briefly give us some context, which you have done. Yeah.
And Negar, the Ayatollah was not just a political leader, but of course a religious leader for more than 3 decades. Now we're hearing that religious leaders in Iran are calling for Muslims to avenge his death. What do you make of that?
Well, he was certainly the country's top political leader, but also a religious leader, not just in Iran, but across the Shia world. And you see sort of that outpouring of grief outside of Iran's borders. And I just think the way the administration has been dealing this situation is, very concerning, very responsible. I don't think they understand the gravity of what they have entered into. Many, many analysts had been warning that this is not going to be a cakewalk. This is going to be more complicated potentially than Iraq or Afghanistan. And they finally did it. I don't think this is going to be short term. I don't think this is going to end easy. I don't know how expanded the Iranian response would be, but so far they have turned this into a regional war.
Negar Mortazavi, thank you so much for your context.